Something has been set in motion inside the Vatican, quietly, without public fanfare. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle has just been given a mysterious new mission. But behind this silent appointment lies a secret most Catholics have never heard. The bells of Rome still toll with an eerie stillness, and in the shadowed halls of the Apostolic Palace, doors have opened, not to crowds or cameras, but to whispers, warnings, and prophecy. No announcement, no grand decree, only silence. And yet, something monumental has begun. Why now? Why him? Cardinal Tagle, the humble servant once hailed as the Asian Francis, has been summoned once more to the innermost chambers of the Church. According to internal reports, never made public, Tagle was called in the early hours, long before sunrise, to a private chamber known only to the Curia elite. Pope Leo XIII was already waiting. No aides, no press, no guards inside. Just two men of faith, and one mission cloaked in divine secrecy. And as the sun rose above St. Peter's Dome, something else rose too. A prophetic thread long buried in the pages of forgotten Fatima documents. Documents never fully revealed. Until now. We must ask, what was given to Tagle? And why has the Vatican, at this exact moment in time, chosen to activate a prophecy long dismissed by scholars as metaphorical? One said to involve the collapse of a spiritual order, the rise of a bridge builder, and the trembling of the nations. Was this moment spoken of in Sister Lucia's unpublished letters? And what role does Cardinal Burke's urgent appeal, just days ago, to restore the old rites of Latin liturgy have to do with this? Could the clash between old and new, tradition and progress, secrecy and truth, be reaching a divine climax? Because something doesn't add up. Not in Rome, not in the press. The world sees a calm. Pope Leo XIV, committed to justice, advocating for survivors of abuse, praising journalistic freedom as essential to transparency. But beneath that holy calm moves a storm, a spiritual storm rising in silence, while all eyes were turned toward Burke's address in London, where he pleaded for the Church to return to its Latin roots. Something else was happening in the corridors of power, a hidden meeting held between Pope Leo XIV and Tagle, without any mention in the public Vatican calendar. And it is this meeting, this unseen handover, that may be the turning key in a heavenly puzzle long in motion. For those who have followed Fatima, not just the third secret, but the sealed warnings of the early apparitions, you know the weight of what this could mean. There are lines in those messages that never saw public release, lines reportedly whispered only to the popes. One such line speaks of a bridge between East and West, who will carry the word across waters as the crown breaks and the bride weeps. Cardinal Tagle has always been seen as that bridge, Filipino by birth, global in reach, loved by many, but also increasingly surrounded by mystery. And what did he say after that meeting? He didn't speak to the press. He didn't post a statement. But sources within the Curia say he was seen praying in the Vatican gardens, alone, for over an hour, kneeling before the statue of Our Lady of Fatima, tears visibly on his face. This is not coincidence. This is calling. Because at the same time, in the Sistine Chapel, Pope Leo XIV held a quiet mass honoring Blessed Cardinal Julio Josu, a man who defended the persecuted, who faced down communist tyranny, who received visions while in prison. And during that mass, Leo made a comment not in the transcript. The martyrs still speak. The chain remains unbroken. The chain of prophecy. What is the Church preparing for? There are whispers from Jerusalem to Buenos Aires that a spiritual convergence is coming, that the great ones, the unseen saints, the silent intercessors, are being gathered, and those chosen for this hour are being assigned, without title, without glory, only mission. This is why Tagle's appointment matters. Because this isn't just a change in Vatican paperwork. This isn't just an internal shuffle. This is the unlocking of a mystery that touches every soul who believes. A moment that may redefine the Church's spiritual direction for generations. Fatima was never about a single day. It was always about a culmination, and it appears that culmination has begun. Tagle's role may be prophetic. Pope Leo's decision may be guided not by reason, but revelation. And the silence may be the loudest sign of all, because heaven often moves not with earthquakes or shouts, but with whispers that thunder through time. So we ask again, why now? Why Tagle? Why the secrecy? What truth lies in the hidden Fatima pages, still under Vatican lock and key? And what happens next when the faithful finally begin to see not just politics, but prophecy? Then listen, because what is unfolding now within the heart of the Catholic Church is not mere ceremony or clerical appointment. It is prophecy, incarnating. The Holy Spirit does not always descend with fanfare. Sometimes he arrives in silence, like a whisper that moves mountains. And on that morning, as the birds sang quietly over the Tiber and pilgrims passed through St. Peter's Square unaware, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle was stepping into something that the world is not ready to face. This is not a promotion. This is a positioning. For war. Not with swords, not with bullets, but with spirits, with ancient enemies, with forces that even saints tremble before. Because the Vatican, yes, the very seat of Peter, is no longer simply a house of prayer. It has become a battleground between light and shadow, between the faithful and the corrupted, between those who walk in the authority of heaven and those who have traded their sacred vestments for secret allegiances, for power, for global control masked as mercy. You see, there are factions within the Church. Factions who do not weep before the cross. Factions who do not kneel before the Eucharist. Factions who work tirelessly, quietly, to rewrite prophecy, to suppress Marian warnings, and to usher in a new church, one not founded on Christ, but on compromise. These are the ones who fear the words of Our Lady of Fatima. These are the ones who tremble at the thought of the true purification of the Bride of Christ. And now, they are afraid of Tagle. Why? Because Tagle is no longer simply a cardinal. He is now the carrier of something sacred, a key, a mission, a message, a burden placed upon his shoulders not by men, but by God. And somewhere in the depths of the Vatican archives, beyond the bronze doors, beneath the papal library, there lies a parchment, a sealed record, one marked with Marian sigils, bearing the stamp of Pope Pius XII. This document has never been shown to the world, and yet, a source within the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith confirms that parchment was retrieved 2 nights before Tagle's private meeting with Pope Leo XIV. Coincidence? No. Providence. Because that parchment is said to contain the 4th Fatima warning. Yes, 4th. The one never spoken of. Not by John XXIII. Not by Paul VI. Not by Benedict XVI. Not even by Francis. A warning too terrible to reveal, one that speaks of betrayal not from outside the Church, but from within it. A prophecy that declares that the Bride of Christ would be pierced from her own side, and that the man chosen to confront this betrayal would come not from Rome, but from the East, bearing the humility of Mary and the fire of Elijah. Tagle fits this. Perfectly, born in Manila, descended from generations of simple Catholics, a voice that echoes the poor, a heart tuned to the suffering, but beneath that humility lies a deep divine fury for truth. And now, he's being sent, not to govern, but to expose. Yes, that is the shocking truth. Tagle's mysterious mission is not administrative. It is prophetic, mission of revelation. He is being sent into the very ranks of the church to confront, face to face, those who would sell the bride for 30 pieces of silver, those who hide within red robes and smiling councils, those who sit at the table, but are not of the Lord. This is why the devout are sensing it, why prayer groups across the world have begun speaking of a shift, why visions are being reported again in South America, in Poland, in the Philippines, all echoing the same cry. The church must be cleansed. La sposa deve essere purificata. The bride must be purified. This is not simply a change of office. This is the beginning of the purification of the Catholic Church, of the fire that shall burn away corruption, of the tears that must fall before joy returns. And it is no coincidence that while Tagle was receiving his divine commission, Cardinal Burke was calling for a restoration, not just of the Latin Mass, but of the very soul of the Church. It is no coincidence that the Pope is now honoring the martyrs again. No coincidence that hidden relics are being moved, that the Vatican gardens, once used for interviews and photo ops, are now filled with quiet men in cassocks, praying long into the night. Something has begun, and the enemy knows it. That is why we are hearing whispers of disruption, of new restrictions, of certain clergy being silenced or reassigned, of investigations into those who disturb unity. But this is not about unity. This is about truth. This is about the bride of Christ standing once more in white, washed not by politics, but by the blood of the Lamb. And that blood calls. It cries out from the altar, from every tabernacle where he is still adored, from every hidden chapel where candles flicker through the night, from every persecuted Christian who still clutches a rosary with shaking hands. Heaven is moving, and Tagle is heaven's messenger. But do not be fooled. His mission will come at a price. The enemy will strike back from within the church itself. There will be betrayals. There will be scandal. There will be a war of words that disguises a war of spirits. And the faithful, you, will be forced to choose, to stay silent for comfort or to rise up for Christ. Because the lines are being drawn. Even now, as this message goes out, meetings are happening in Vatican corridors. Plans are being made. Some seek to guard the deposit of faith, others to twist it. And the final confrontation, prophesied by saints, by Pope John Paul II himself, is on the horizon. Yes, the final confrontation between the church and the anti-church, the gospel and the anti-gospel. And now we see the players stepping into place. Pope Leo XIV, the reformer, battling corruption while walking a tightrope over wolves. Cardinal Tagle, the prophetic servant sent into the heart of the storm. Cardinal Burke, the clarion voice of tradition, warning the church not to forget her roots. The bride of Christ, trembling, torn, but not abandoned. And above them all, Our Lady of Fatima, who weeps, who pleads, who still says, "In the end, my immaculate heart will triumph." But before that triumph, there must be trial, and the trial has now begun. But do not expect this battle to look like the wars of men. No trumpets will sound from earthly towers. No newspapers will declare it. No world leaders will comment. Because the war for the soul of the Catholic Church is not being fought in headlines, but in sanctuaries, in whispered prayers, in veiled confessions, in rooms without cameras, where the air grows thick with incense and the breath of angels. In Rome, it is already happening, within the marble corridors where popes once walked barefoot, in penance, within the sealed vaults where letters from heaven still sit unopened, within the aching heart of a church torn between surrendering to the world or surrendering to the cross. And the bride of Christ, our holy church, bleeds. Yes, she bleeds. She bleeds because her children are confused. She bleeds because shepherds have failed. She bleeds because wolves have crept into the fold wearing the garments of apostles. And now, the fire must come. Not the fire of punishment, but the fire of purification. Because gold is tested in flames, and the church is gold, eternal, indestructible, but in need of refining. Do not fear. The fire is not sent to destroy. It is sent to reveal, to burn away the counterfeit, to silence the serpents, to raise up a church that looks once more like her crucified spouse, wounded, radiant, and risen. And in this hour, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle walks not as a diplomat, but as a man set aflame, a torch lit by the same divine light that once illuminated the tomb of Peter. He may speak softly, but he carries the roar of prophecy, a roar that shakes thrones built on lies, a roar that echoes through history to the moment the veil was torn in two. And soon, the world will see what heaven already knows, that Tagle has been chosen to walk a hidden road, one walked long ago by saints, by martyrs, by the few who knew that obedience to God would cost them everything, and they went anyway. But here is the final twist, one that even the watchers in the Vatican did not foresee. Because while Tagle walks into the lion's den, he is not alone. Hidden across the world, in parishes overlooked and in convents forgotten, in broken men who still believe and humble women who still pray, heaven is gathering its army, not with titles, not with wealth, but with faith, with rosaries that have not been let go, with Eucharists received with trembling love, with knees that have never stopped kneeling, with hearts that burn for the truth, even when the world offers them comfort in exchange for compromise. And in this very moment, something ancient is returning, a spirit long awaited, a stirring of Marian warriors, of Eucharistic defenders, of silent saints who have endured in the shadows. The remnant is rising, and when the final veil is lifted, when the church is no longer afraid to suffer, but chooses once more to reign from the cross, then the bride will shine like the new Jerusalem, dressed in white, washed in the blood of the Lamb, and the gates of hell will fall, not just held back, shattered, not by politics, not by protest, but by praise, by the prayers of the faithful, by the tears of repentant priests, by the songs of children who still believe in miracles, by one voice, trembling yet unshaken, saying, I still believe in the one, holy, Catholic and Apostolic Church. And in that moment, a light will appear above the Vatican, a sign no one expected, not a sword, not a dove, but a crown, descending, not placed on any man, but on the Church herself. As the bride, once wounded, now rises, glorious, radiant, unstoppable. And, in the silence of that moment, all the powers of darkness will know they have lost forever.